Welcome to Parental Alienation and Narcissism by J. Claude McDaniel. This program is to help you heal and navigate through the hardships associated with narcissistic alienation. Please like and subscribe.
Welcome to episode 14. My name is J. Claude McDaniel, author and victim of alienation. I share my experiences, education, and provide valuable information that I hope will help you navigate through your plight. In this episode, I take you through the subject and methods of gaslighting. From when reality begins to shift in Part A to escaping the fog of gaslighting in Part B. Part A, when reality begins to shift. It started with a single sentence. You were never there when I needed you. Alex sat silently trying to process the words. They didn't make sense. Every memory he held told a different story. He remembered the late nights comforting sick children, the school events, the soccer games, the birthday parties, the endless moments that make up a parent's life. Yet here was one of his children speaking with complete certainty. Not uncertainty, not confusion, certainty. As though those memories had never happened at all. That was the moment Alex came face to face with one of the most powerful weapons in narcissistic abuse: gaslighting. Unlike open hostility, gaslighting rarely announces itself. It doesn't arrive through shouting. It doesn't depend on dramatic confrontations. Instead, it works quietly, patiently, over time. Its purpose isn't simply to tell a lie. Its purpose is to make someone question their own reality, their own memory, their own understanding of the truth. And perhaps most frightening of all, victims often don't realize it's happening until years later. Alex eventually learned that gaslighting isn't usually built on one enormous deception. It's built on hundreds of smaller distortions, tiny revisions, subtle alterations, repeated often enough that they begin feeling true. A single lie may raise suspicion. 1,000 repetitions can reshape memory. One of the most common tactics is rewriting history. A child may hear, "Your father was never there for your important moments. Your mother always cared more about herself than about you." The statements may be completely false, but children naturally trust the people they depend upon. And when those messages are repeated year after year, they begin competing with actual memories. Eventually, confusion takes hold. Alex also learned that gaslighting often relies on emotional authority. The alienating parent doesn't simply tell a story. They tell it with conviction, with emotion, with certainty. The delivery becomes part of the persuasion. A statement delivered with confidence often feels more believable than facts delivered quietly, particularly for children who lack the experience to question what they're hearing. Over time, another tactic begins to emerge: guilt, shame, and loyalty pressure. Children may be subtly taught that remembering events differently is a betrayal, that questioning the narrative is disloyal, that loyalty requires agreement. As a result, many children stop trusting their own memories, not because they are weak, but because the emotional cost of disagreement becomes too high. The pressure isn't always obvious. In fact, it's often invisible, but its impact can be profound. Perhaps the most damaging aspect of gaslighting is how it affects future conversations. Children may be taught, "He'll never tell you the truth. She always lies about what happened. He can't admit what he did." Once those ideas take root, every future interaction becomes contaminated by doubt. Even honest conversations become suspect. Even genuine attempts at connection become viewed through a lens of distrust. By the time Alex understood what was happening, he realized the battle wasn't simply about correcting facts. It was about protecting reality itself. Because when memory becomes uncertain, relationships become vulnerable. And when trust in reality disappears, manipulation becomes far easier. In the next part of this story, we'll explore the long-term effects of gaslighting, how it impacts both children and targeted parents, and how to escape the fog it creates. Part B: Escaping the Fog of Gaslighting. Years after the divorce, Alex experienced a moment he would never forget. One of his children looked at him and said, "You were never there for us." The statement hit him like a punch to the chest. Not because it was true, but because it was spoken with complete confidence. There was no hesitation, no uncertainty, no awareness that the memory itself had been altered. That is one of the most devastating consequences of gaslighting. The victim doesn't realize they have been manipulated. They believe they are remembering reality. For children, the effects can last for years, sometimes decades. Children exposed to chronic gaslighting often struggle with identity, trust, confidence, and emotional stability. They may question their own perceptions, doubt their own memories, and rely heavily on the alienating parent's version of events because it feels safer than challenging it. Many develop anxiety. Others struggle with depression. Some carry a constant sense of confusion they can't quite explain. The damage isn't always visible, but it often shapes how they view relationships for the rest of their lives. The targeted parent experiences a different kind of suffering. Alex spent years wondering why the relationship with his children felt increasingly distant. He noticed the coldness, the accusations, the withdrawal, but he couldn't see the process creating those outcomes. By the time the symptoms appeared, the gaslighting had often been happening for years. That realization can be overwhelming. To discover that false narratives have quietly replaced real memories. To realize that love has been buried beneath layers of manipulation. To understand that conversations you never heard have shaped relationships you care deeply about. Many targeted parents describe the experience as grieving someone who is still alive. Not because the child is gone, but because the relationship they once shared feels unreachable. Yet there is hope. Because gaslighting depends on confusion. And confusion begins losing power when it is recognized. Alex eventually learned that overcoming gaslighting rarely happens through confrontation. People rarely abandon deeply held beliefs because someone argues with them. Instead, clarity emerges slowly. A contradiction appears. A question surfaces. An old photograph triggers a forgotten memory. A story stops making sense. The cracks begin forming naturally. This is why documentation matters. Photographs, letters, emails, journals, records of real events. Not to prove someone wrong, but to preserve reality. When memories are challenged, facts become anchors. They provide stability in a sea of confusion. Most importantly, Alex learned that healing requires patience. Children and adults emerging from gaslighting often need time to reconnect with their own memories, their own perceptions, their own understanding of truth. That process cannot be forced. It must unfold naturally. The lesson from this chapter is simple but powerful. Gaslighting doesn't destroy reality. It obscures it. It creates fog, confusion, uncertainty. But the truth remains beneath it all, waiting. And when enough questions arise, when enough contradictions appear, and when enough real memories begin resurfacing, the fog starts to lift. One memory at a time. One realization at a time. One truth at a time. As this story continues, we'll explore how targeted parents need to protect their parental rights early before alienation, and for as long as possible. This ends episode 14 of my videos. Episode 15 will be speaking to protecting your parental rights. Thank you for reviewing my site and listening to this episode. Please like, subscribe, and comment. It helps this valuable site to grow and spread sound educational information. Sincere thanks, J. Claude McDaniel.